Welcome to Watkins Glen 2. If you're like me, you're always looking forward to another chance to drive at one of our favorite tracks. And certainly that's no exception with the event coming up in less than 2 weeks. So everyone probably remembers that this is referred to as an advanced event. And that got us to thinking that a good topic for this class would be, well, what is an advanced driver? Or, what are the skills expected of an advanced driver? And so that's led us to put together a advanced driver checklist. And so rather than going through some PowerPoint slides, in this session, I'm going to do a brief walkthrough of this advanced driver checklist. I want to start by pointing out that this is not something that we just quickly thought of. This actually pulls from what's called the HPDE curriculum guide, which you may have heard some about in the past. It was published about 1.5 years ago now, and it represents years and years worth of work by a whole bunch of dedicated folks. And we've used that material for instructor checklists and for many other purposes. And it's helped inform much of what we do in our classroom series. And you've even seen some of the slides from their work. But today we're using the raw material, if you will, that they put together, which is a series of skills, skills that drivers have to exhibit at every level. But here we've pulled them in a format to be used for an advanced driver or a solo driver. So it's a checklist, and I'll show you. Here's what it looks like as an example, and I'll go through that in a second. But there's an introduction here, which I'm just going to touch on one more minute, and say that that this list is here in a checklist format so that you can go through and check off the ones that you think you're doing well on, and kind of circle or highlight the ones that you need to work on. And as this says here, if you don't have any to work on, you probably need to think again. I know I certainly can't check all of these off, and unless you're a pro driver, I doubt if you can either. Now, these are stated in nice, concrete, measurable language. And so there shouldn't be too much difficulty in understanding what they mean. The ones that have an M in front of them are kind of the minimum skills that are required to be a solo driver. So hopefully everyone who's coming to Watkins Glen can check those skills, although some days there are times when we see driving that makes us wonder. But that said, let's move ahead and use these in a very constructive way. Now, just for discussion purposes, I've put the skills here in 3 categories: driving skills, situational awareness and courtesy, and learning mindset. And before I dive in here, 2 other things. At the end here, we'll touch briefly on some common mistakes that are made by advanced drivers, and then last but probably most important, before we dive in, a definition of advanced driving. What is advanced driving? Well, Ross Bentley, I think, says it best, and he says the advanced stuff is just doing the basics better. In other words, as an advanced driver, we may not think about the line as much as a student driver, but the line is the line is the line, and is really important, just as one example. And so pros work on the same things that you and I work on. They work on the same thing that beginners work on. It's just they do it better. And that's really important. The second point that Ross makes here is, the best drivers are committed to learning. They're committed to getting better. and they work at it by preparing. So nothing new there for most of you, but an important reminder is we're going to an advanced event with a ton of track time. Let's use some of that track time to, refine our skills, get better and safer while we're on the track. So with that, let's dive in. Driving skills. Again, you're not going to hear anything that's new here, or if you do, I'll be surprised. But at the same time, this is a checklist to go through and see how you're doing. So the minimum skills for a solo driver, the ability to look through all the turns, and including blind ones, and have a mental image of where the car needs to be, and be able to do that with your own reference points without being reliant on the cones. A more advanced version of that same skill, which I would expect all black run group drivers to have, and many experienced white run group drivers to have. And that's demonstrate expert vision skills by looking well ahead, continually scanning down track for emerging information. So, again, continuously scanning down track, really important skill that we all need to continue to refine. And of course, being aware of flags and safety situations and so on. Earlier, as an example, I mentioned the line. Well, an advanced driver should be able to drive the line flawlessly, effortlessly, without placing themselves or others at risk, and have the ability to alter that line when and where necessary. An obvious example is after taking a pass. There's no need to jump back in front of the car you just passed. Enter the next corner offline. It's even if there is room to jump in front of the car, we encourage students to stay offline. Certainly, advanced drivers should feel no need to jump back in front of a car. And that's just one example. Obviously, there are other examples. And advanced drivers can experiment with small adjustments, maybe turning in slightly earlier, but with a slightly slower turn-in speed. And also can identify high-risk areas of the track and adjust their driving style to manage risk, because none of us want to take high risk when we're on the track. Smoothness. Again, nothing new here, right? You've all heard about smoothness before. Minimum skill, brake and accelerate very smoothly, including smooth brake release. Releasing the brakes gradually, including some trail brake to help the car turn, and having mastered heel and toe. There's a slightly more advanced version of the same language here about providing very smooth inputs at all speeds, adjusting the timing and the rate of the release of the brake pedal in small increments to fine-tune entry speed and car rotation. That's something I guarantee we can all get better at. I know that's something I work on every time I go out. Making steering inputs, adjusting the pace of the steering inputs, to improve grip or increase speed. Heel and toe without any interruption to the brake pressure, and throttle steering where appropriate. Pace, advanced drivers run at a good pace, right? Considerable momentum through corners, appropriate for the run group, approaching the limits of the car, but not at the limits, because this is DE, it's not racing. Car control, basic skills, minimum skills. Don't rely on PSM or other electronic aids, and demonstrate competent car control and recovery skills when needed. And an important point here, recognize when they're unsure of a solution to a handling or performance issue and seek guidance. It's too easy if you're driving in white and black to not take advantage of some of the resources, and I'll say more about that in a minute. And last but not least, in the driving skills section is consistency. Basically, the ability to recognize when driving deviates from what it should be and take immediate corrective action, and to perform the skills that we've just gone through, lap after lap with very minor variation. Obviously, these are all important skills, but consistency in being able to do them on a consistent basis is really a mark of someone who is driving well. Now, of course, driver's ed is about more than just the driving skills. There's other cars on track, and track conditions change. That's where situational awareness and courtesy come in. So a key skill is respect and courtesy. Automatically using proper hand signals and sound judgment in all passing situations, demonstrating courtesy. That's a basic minimum skill, right? Another way to say that in a slightly more advanced way is to say always drive in a non-aggressive manner, prompt pass signals with enough lead time that the overtaking car does not have to slow their speed. Think about that. If you give a pass signal and then have to brake early, you gave the pass signal too late, or perhaps you should have waited. Timing of pass signals is a big deal. And we see way too many examples, even in white and black, of drivers not giving pass signals soon enough to keep the flow of traffic the way it should be. And of course, if you are an overtaking car, you don't drive on the bumper of slower cars and you avoid other aggressive behaviors. Speed differentials are a dimension of this. So calmly dealing with the speed differentials is a basic skill. Setting up passing scenarios is a basic skill. Being able to handle cars very close behind and in front without losing focus, without that affecting your driving. And again, anticipate passing situations and accomplishing passes with minimal speed adjustments, minimal time side by side. In other words, late passes where both drivers are having to perhaps adjust their driving into a particular corner, not an example of an advanced skill. It's an example of somebody didn't execute their passing protocol as well as they could have. And we see too many examples of that, where it simply does not need to happen that way. And of course, track conditions. Being able to see the track conditions, whether that's weather, somebody dropped oil, or it's a groundhog, or whatever it is, really obviously a basic skill, as is scanning runoff areas so that you know where you can take avoiding action if you need to. Seeing all the flags, especially when in traffic. And checking each flag station at the earliest place on track where they can see the flag station. That's really important. And looking as far ahead as possible. Now, a more expert way to think about that is this last bullet on the page, which is here, says infer the situation on track from any flag or sequence of flags and be prepared to execute a safe response. I mean, a simple example of that is, you see a car alongside the track and no flags. Well, it's entirely possible that if that car isn't going pretty quickly, you're going to see a black flag situation, an all black. That's a simple example, but a real one. Safety is, we talk about safe, serious fun. Minimum skill is to be able to recognize when you're becoming overly focused on speed or competing with other cars, and recalibrate the head or pull in so that you can focus back on being safe and on learning. Do enough reconnaissance of the track so that you do know the runoff areas, barriers and such, the things that affect the safety of getting around the track, and having that noted on a track map. And again, no aggressive driving. And last in the skills list is learning mindset. And, perhaps this should have been first. There's no, we could have easily done these skills in any sequence. But attitude, this is a minimum skill. A driving record and an attitude consistent with our philosophy of safe, serious fun. Notes, keeping notes about what you're executing well, what you're working on, how that's changing through practice. Hopefully these notes are on track maps, and accurately identifying your own strengths and weaknesses and prioritizing what to work on. And that's one of the reasons I'm presenting this checklist, is this is a convenient way to provide you a reminder of things to think about. And last but not least, take advantage of resources. Obviously there's instructors at events, there's chief instructors, there's video and data systems, there's coaches, there's lots of things. And as you look through this list of skills, if you say, hey, well, I really need to work, focus on brake release. Well, one of the resources available are, the YouTube videos that we've done on braking. And we've done ones on vision, we've done ones on smoothness, we've done ones on consistency. Most of the skills on this list, we've spent time putting together, what we hope is expert advice on how to deal with, and in particular, how to improve your skills, including how to learn better. So there are lots of resources out there. And if you need help with a particular skill and you can't find that particular resource, just ask, because I'm sure we can find it. Now, just as a counterpoint, if you will, to some of these skills and some of the reasons why this checklist is needed, we've listed here just a couple of common mistakes that we see drivers in white and black run groups making. Perhaps one of the most common is trying too hard and overdriving. And this, it often means, braking too late, too much trail brake, lots of drama in the early part of a corner, and therefore compromising corner exit. Harder on the car, harder on the driver than driving properly. And sometimes that's driven by somebody focused on lap times and trying to, quote, go fast, as opposed to working on technique. Driving is all about technique. I love Peter Krause's quote, driving is all about the best execution of fundamental skills. That's this quote right here. So in other words, same thing Ross Bentley's saying, expert driving is doing the basics better. So executing those fundamental skills. And speaking of that, why would an advanced driver drive a poor line, missing an apex or crabbing in before the turn-in point? I don't know the answer to that completely. Sometimes the driver just gets tired, but we've seen it in more cases than that. And one possible explanation is that modern Porsches are very good at getting around corners. And so you can be pretty sloppy and still feel like you're going fast, but that doesn't excuse poor execution. Another reason could be just the reliance on the technology. The modern technology is very good and doesn't give the driver a lot of indication unless they happen to see the PSM light. So make sure that you're not relying too much on the technology. And then a last comment about aggressive driving. Aggressive driving is more than flashing your lights or honking your horn in somebody's behind somebody's car. If you're in a faster car and you close on a car coming up to a braking zone, don't expect to get a pass. at the last minute going into the bus stop. The driver should give you a pass exiting the bus stop. On the other hand, if you're a car being overtaken, give the pass signal early in a passing zone. And if I stay with my back straight example, if you give a pass, early in the main straight after the S's, neither car should have to change their pace very much. Perhaps the overtaking car has to lift for a brief second, but not for very long. And of course, lack of pass signals is a clear aggressive driving problem. And we don't want to see trains. We should never see trains actually in white or black, especially after the first run of the day when people sort themselves out. If you see a car behind for more than one corner, they get a pass signal. On the other hand, if you pass a car at the end of a straight or on a straight because you have a lot more power than they do, but then they're behind you. For example, you pass them on the back straight and now they're behind you coming out of turn 5. Well, they're probably faster through that section than you are. Maybe you should let them by and follow them for a few corners because it sounds like they're getting through corners faster than you are. Back to courtesy, right? Back to learning. All of this stuff ties together. So to summarize, we've put all this together to remind everyone that advanced driving is nothing more than the same skills we've all been learning for years, but refined and done consistently, done smoothly, and so on. I hope you find the checklist useful. I really encourage you to use it. And I also really would appreciate your feedback on any place where it can be improved or how any particular skill that's listed, applies in your particular case. So one more late addition to the checklist that is specific to the Black Run Group, and that is a section on expanded passing. The White Run Group, doesn't use expanded passing, but obviously Black does. So, so a few reminders and a couple of tips related to expanded passing. First and foremost, if you are in the Black Run Group, especially if you're relatively new, you really need to get familiar with the expanded passing guidelines. And they're right on the website. I'll put a link to them in the comment section below this YouTube video, but and this document will be available as a link there as well. But the key thing that they say is that just because you can pass anywhere, it doesn't mean you should or even want to pass anywhere, or that you should expect to get a pass signal anywhere, or give one anywhere for that matter. I mean, first, courtesy is still expected. This is DE, it's not racing. We're not trying to contest, the last inch of the track. And the guidelines go on to say that passing should still be done mainly on straight sections. Yes, passing is allowed in the corners, but in the end, that slows down both cars and isn't fun for either. And I could say the same, frankly, for late passes, because they have the same effect of slowing both cars down. Now, if a pass does happen going into a corner, then each driver owns half the track. And so in theory, the driver on the inside is going to drive around the corner on the inside half of the track, the driver on the outside half of the track. Well, there's a tip here that suggests that if you're experienced and you have just given a pass, you're going to slow down enough to duck behind the car in front so that you don't have to actually split the track. That's safer because you're not side by side, and a little bit quicker as well. But the key thing is it's safer. I mean, running side by side is never a good idea, right? And again, while passing's allowed anywhere, there may be times when it isn't wise to give or take a pass. There's a couple of examples listed here. Perhaps you're thinking of giving a pass as you are coming up on the second half of a passing zone, but you see that there's already a bunch of traffic ahead, and giving a pass is just going to make that situation worse. So perhaps you pause and give that pass signal at the next opportunity. Or maybe you're given a pass in that circumstance, and you can look ahead and see past the car in front that there really isn't room at that point for you. And again, good judgment suggests you just wave it off. Because there could be a situation where you would normally give a pass signal, but there's something offline that you don't want the overtaking car to encounter. And I'm sure you can come up with other examples, but this is here to highlight that safety and good judgment are always the first priority. Safety first. It's called safe, serious, fun in that sequence, for a reason, as you all know. Now, I've also repeated here in the checklist some tips from the expanded passing write-up on things not to expect. And they're pretty obvious, and we've already talked about a few of them, but don't expect a pass signal when you catch someone just before a corner or even entering a corner. Late passes slow down both cars. We just said that. Don't correlate to that. Don't expect an immediate pass signal near the end of a straight, from a slower car. That car may be faster than you in the corners, but as the point above this suggests, if that slower car gives you a pass, it will probably slow them down as well as you, and there's no need for a pass. Obviously, when you're running with your buddy and both of you come up on a slower car, you'd both like to get a pass signal. Well, that doesn't always work, so don't expect that. And in particular, don't expect an automatic pass signal, just because your car is faster in a straight line. Now, some people make the mistake of assuming they're going to get a pass and not even getting behind the car in front. That's never a good idea. And finally, and very importantly, we don't want to see trains. Those of you that ran in the Black Run group at Watkins Glen recently know that there were reported issues about trains. And frankly, that should never happen. So if there's a car behind you for more than one corner, it's time to send them by. And the chiefs will certainly pay attention to that. But if you're getting held up regularly in a train or lack of pass signals, a reminder that you always have the option to pull into the pits and report a car number to the chief, and then go back out. So with all of that said, we hope none of these problematic situations come up, and that everybody has a safe event at Watkins Glen geez, what are we looking at? 10 days at this point, or less. But have a safe trip up, and I will see you at Watkins Glen and other future events.